Welcome to Season 4, Episode 23 of the Outlap F1 Podcast, part of the Ship It Studios Podcast Network. I am your host, James, along with my wonderful co-hosts, Andy and Deanna. And we are talking the 2022 Canadian Grand Prix race review. Andy, welcome in tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I guess for what was actually a very fun race, I left it horribly annoyed. We'll get into all that in a little bit. We're probably going to do some role reversal where I was being your therapist last weekend. You may have to give me some therapy because my team just foundered and screwed up the pooch. Screwed the pooch this weekend. Yikes.
And Deanna, looks like you're reporting from an unidentified location. Are you safe and secure?
Actually, if anybody remembers this, the very OG YouTube background. It's been a very long time, but I have returned home for the weekend here, so we're back to this, although without any good lighting, or camera, so this is best we got.
Yeah, camera's a little bit laggy, but you've got your microphone set up, which is more than I can say most of the time.
Deanna's looking like the war correspondent, like I would expect to see. And behind me, this is where the tanks are amassing, as they're going to go over there tomorrow.
I mean, at this point, it wouldn't surprise me if there were tanks outside of a Grand Prix. I was going to ask, too, because I feel like the last time I saw that background was the one of your Drive to Survive, like the all-nighter one you did to watch. Was that the second season? Feels like forever ago.
4? I think it was the third season. Yeah, that
was
a
the third
traumatizing day in my life.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to block it from my memory still.
Well, we could do that, and we will talk a little bit about the Canadian Grand Prix today. Before we get into that, I have to remind everybody you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast. Check out our link tree on our Twitter profile page. If you're watching on YouTube, do us a solid and click like and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcasting app, click a 5-star review. Help us get our show out there. You can email the show at chatnow@outlapf1.com. You can check out the website at www.outlapf1.com, where you can find all of our back catalog of episodes, including our F1 for Beginners episode, which is perfect for any of you who are new to the sport, which there may be some because it was on ABC today, which was pretty cool here in the States. But that's back on episode 4 of this season. Of course, you can also check out Relap with Deanna, where she has her race review episodes up. So make sure you check that out. And then Andy, Outlap F1 Nation stepping up. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, as always, thank you so much to our continued monetary supporters, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Cody Walsh, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, Mary Brown, Jonathan Scott, and, of course, Matt Polanski from the Red Sector MotoGP podcast. He had an early up this morning reviewing the German Grand Prix for MotoGP. Germany, we've got Canada, so good going, Matt and the Red Sector MotoGP folks.
Yeah, if you also want to help promote the show or help support the show, you can check out that link in our show notes. That's through Anchor. You can also help out the show by going to Manscaped and using code OUTLAP, that's OUTLAP, all one word, for 20% off and free shipping. And of course, check out our buddies Vincenzo's t-shirt line at thef1guy.com. And we have Athletic Greens, where you can check out athleticgreens.com/emerging, one of our newer sponsors. So make sure you go and check them out. Maybe one day we'll get Canada Dry in there. Andy, I'm digging the product placement. Feeling Canadian today.
For the Canadian Grand Prix, you got to go Canada Dry.
Very good, Andy. Very subtle. All right, so let's move into our headlines of the day. Andy, why don't you kick us off?
For what I felt overall was actually a fairly fun and entertaining Canadian Grand Prix. Sometimes these can be kind of duds. I thought this whole weekend was actually quite entertaining, but it just left me so overwhelmingly annoyed. My McLaren boys are just, I don't know what's wrong with them this weekend. This was not their weekend, so yick for that. But a fun race overall, so at least we had that.
All right, very good. John wrote in and says, on a day when Max got the easiest win of his career, in parentheses, no signs was never going to get past him, and where Clean Air Leclerc got lucky with a late safety car to finish P5 after doing nothing during the race, Mercedes don't look like shit for once. So John wins for longest headline. I think that'll take up most of the front page, but that's his thoughts. I have little by little double top 5 finish for Ferrari, gets them 4 points closer to Red Bull. So this championship is not over yet. I still believe. Deanna, what do you got?
Oh, Canada. Happy to be back. Definitely the qualifying session was awesome, and just happy it's been quite the hiatus, so just happy to be back.
All right. Andy, why don't you walk us through qualifying?
All right, here we go. All right, so in what was a very wet and wild qualifying session on Saturday, it was also quite cold, so we'll take you through that now. Going out in P20 was Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri. P19 was Nicholas Latifi. P18, Lance Stroll. P17, Sebastian Vettel, so not a good day for the two Aston Martins. P16 was Pierre Gasly. Going through to Q2, but going no farther in P15, this was strategic, was Charles Leclerc. He set a lap time and then didn't set a lap time in the session because he was taking engine penalties. P14 was Lando Norris. He also did not set a lap time due to the fact that he had some engine issues himself. P13, Sergio Perez. P12, Alex Albon. P11, Valtteri Bottas. Going into the top 10, into Q3, for the, I think, first time in his career, in P10 was Joe Granu. P9 was Daniel Ricciardo. P8, George Russell. P7, Esteban Ocon. P6, Mick Schumacher, personal best for him. P5, Kevin Magnussen in a great Saturday for the two Haas boys. P4 was Lewis Hamilton. P3 was Carlos Sainz. P2, Fernando Alonso, and in P1 with a lap time of 1:21.299 was Max Verstappen.
Which was way off my time. I blame the rain.
I warned you guys about track records.
Yeah, it was a nice mixed up grid. It was a fun qualifying session in the rain there. But at the end of the day, Max finishes out there on top. And really high hopes going into Sunday with some of these drivers, which didn't work out so good for them, which we'll get into right away here as we go lights out. Let's talk backmarkers first. So we got Yuki Tsunoda, Mick Schumacher, Sergio Checo Perez all failing to finish. Kevin Magnussen was last of the finishers in 17th. Nicholas Latifi in 16th. Lando Norris all the way back in 15th, just behind Pierre Gasly in 14th and Alexander Albon in 13th. So let's start off with Checo Perez. 8 laps into the race, and he pulls off with some sort of mechanical failure. I think originally they were reporting hydraulics. I don't know if you've heard anything else, but quite a shocker there to start off the day, huh, Andy?
Yeah, not the race. For the latest championship contender, it just seems like every time somebody bubbles up and wants to get into that P2 position, something bad happens, and something bad happened to Sergio Perez. It was either a gearbox or something mechanical. It didn't look like an engine. I thought maybe it was, but there was no puff of smoke or anything like that. But he lost drive, had to come to a stop, and triggered the first virtual safety car, which proved to be the first twist of the day, really.
Yeah, Deanna, any surprise? I know I was pretty shocked to see, I think it was both Max and Lewis, at least the notable guys, that took that very first pit stop there at lap 8, lap 9. Pretty shocking.
Yeah, it was. And I think it was kind of unless you were Kevin Magnussen, which we'll get to in a minute, definitely the admitting that we were going to a two-stopper, which I think kind of early on they were starting to see some graining. So I guess they just decided to take the gamble while they had it. Ended up working out for them. So yeah, surprise in the moment, but definitely went their way.
Yeah, definitely some early graining there, I think, spurned that decision. But those two dudes, it clearly worked out for them since they finished in first and third. So let's move on to Mick Schumacher. Already struggling this year, as I've been starting to point out more and more. But now you're telling me he's going to be unlucky too? Like, that's not a good mixture.
Yes,
yeah, nothing of really... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say this continues the long run of Haas doing well in qualifying. Their best ever qualifying, I think. And then just going absolutely nowhere in the race. One stop in K-Mag, I can't get over that, from lap 7 was just not the right way to go, obviously. And it didn't last on the road.
Well, K-Mag has a bit of an excuse because his pit stop was sort of forced on him. Because of his initial contact, I think on the first lap, I think it was with Ocon or somebody like that. And So he has a piece of his wing hanging off, and the lovely FIA in all of their brilliance, this isn't a flag that they usually bring out, but they brought out the black flag with an orange disc, which compels the competitor to come in to pit to fix the front wing. If that's any other car on the road, I've seen front wings with worse stuff hanging off, continuing to go. K-Mag's got beef here, if you ask me. This was kind of a BS call.
I'm with you on that, Andy. We've seen drivers with that end plate dangling from their car as they continue to drive and finish very high in the table. So, pretty shitty day for him. Yuki Tsunoda then with our last of the three non-finishers. And he made things kind of interesting there at the end with about 20 laps to go with that safety car that triggered some changes. Pretty much saved Ferrari's day, saved Ferrari's strategy. I think without that safety car, things would not have turned out as well as they did for Sainz or Leclerc for that matter. But it's moving on to Magnussen now. So Haas starts the day, 5th and 6th, and they end up being one guy not finishing at all, the other guy the last place finisher, and that being K-Mag. So you already kind of mentioned he got screwed by that black and orange flag to kind of ruin his day thanks to Alpine and Ocon.
Strategy. He did one stop from lap 7 to lap 70. He was on one set of hards. That was not a good idea.
That didn't help.
Yeah, I guess they had him roll the dice there, but it did not work out whatsoever. But thanks to that, Nicholas Latifi, the homegrown hero, didn't finish last on track and finished the race, which good for you, sport. Go get him next time. Lando Norris, Andy, let's start getting you a little bit upset. Take it away.
What a I don't know really where to begin. So I guess we can start on Saturday. So he comes out in Q2, and obviously it looks like this is rainy, wet conditions. This looks like Lando Norris territory. We've seen him before, been able to capitalize on this. He goes out, he's complaining immediately in qualifying. Something's not right with the engine. It's misfiring. They brought him in. They power cycled the whole car. They sent him back out. They brought him back in again. He actually got lucky in that qualifying session because there was a red flag, so they could bring him in. They took the side pods off. They tried to diagnose the problem. They finally get him out there with about 3 minutes to go. He tries to set a lap time. It's not competitive, and so they just pulled him in and said that was it. Now, I would have thought right then and there, if you're starting P14 on this day at a track where historically you've been able to overtake, I would throw all new engine components at this car. I'd throw new MGUH, MGUK. I'd take whatever penalties you had because you already had two drivers doing that. You had Tsunoda and you had Charles Leclerc. So the worst you were going to do was go from 14th to what, 18th? Because you technically did out-qualify those guys. McLaren opts to do none of that. In fact, what they did was they put in an older spec engine, I think it was engine number 1, that has the most miles on it. So effectively, they're sending him out there on an engine-dependent circuit with a Friday engine. And, of course, he's slow in the straights, and the slow corner bugaboo that came up in Bahrain hit that car again. So every time he'd go around that hairpin there, he'd just lose out. So he was unable, he could get close to cars. He couldn't pass anybody. We'll talk a little bit later. I'm going to save the pit stop whole mess for later because I want to keep my voice intact until then.
Good work, Andy. A nice rant and a teaser all in one. You're a pro. Deanna, anything on your boy Pierre Gasly's day? Pretty disappointing there in 14th place.
Yeah, not great. I think he did have some issue at the end. They took a weird gamble on his strategy and pit him on lap 5. Just kind of didn't go anywhere. Thought after last weekend he might kind of have a resurgence. He looked really strong in the wet in practice, but then came qualifying and it all kind of unraveled from there. So just a bit disappointing, which has kind of been in line with his season and AlphaTauri, really. AlphaTauri and Haas today, just rough.
Yeah, Gasly's kind of had an up-down year with more downs than ups for sure. Andy, Albon, was it him that he kind of got screwed? Was it the last safety car? He pitted right before, I think, the final safety car. That really kind of screwed him out.
The first thing that screwed him was the first virtual safety car where he had pitted, I think it was a lap or two before that came out. Then everybody came out. He ends up in, I think it was P15. The Williams car in general seemed pretty good in the straight line, so it wasn't terrible here. But obviously in the twisty bits, it wasn't doing quite as well. But and Albon made the car wide when he could, but again, there were lots of DRS trains that formed, and he was just part of one, and it really couldn't advance forward from there. So had good track position, and unfortunately lost it due to the VSC.
Yeah, and it's not really often we say for a Williams driver that they had a really bad day and they were in 13th. Usually that's like a really good day for Williams. So Albon, I think it continues to impress there. All right, so up to the midfield now. Sebastian Vettel, I felt like was teasing some of his fans all weekend lead into Saturday and then Sunday. Didn't do much there in 12th. Danny Ricciardo in 11th for double non-points finish for McLaren. Lance Stroll, the Canadian guy, steals a point there, finishing in 10th place. Fernando Alonso then in 9th. Zhou Guanyu with his top finish of his short career in 8th. Valtteri Bottas in 7th. Esteban Ocon in 6th. Charles Leclerc in 5th. And George Russell, yet again, top 5 finish in P4. So just a little bit on Vettel if you got anything, Andy, because I think he is who I think he is, and that is not very good.
Well, I would say he was one of him and Alonso were really the darlings of Friday. And we've talked many times on this show that sometimes when you're the darling of Friday, sometimes it carries through. And sometimes when you're the darling of Friday, it doesn't. And it clearly didn't. When the weather shifted, whether that car was better in warm weather and they just didn't get it, that could be something. But it started out like it was going to be a very promising weekend for one Seb Vettel. Did not result at the end of the day. So P12 was all he got.
All right, Deanna. So for Fernando Alonso, I'm always like real hot and cold on him. I'm not a big fan of his. I don't really dislike him. He's just kind of a guy. But I was really excited for this race, as I think a lot of people were coming in with him on the front row. We're going to see some fireworks maybe with Max. He's going to go up there and fight. Were you as disappointed as I was? I feel like we got nothing really out of him. He didn't really put up a fight much with anybody. And just, I mean, 9th place, 2 points after the qualifying he had.
Well, I think, part of it, they definitely overhyped him dive bombing him into turn 1. On the kind of pre-race show, they showed the past 3 starts, and it was always the second place person defending from third, never anywhere close to who was in the lead. So I think that kind of got overblown to begin with. But then he was just around faster cars, I think, with Sainz and Hamilton and Russell, and then they left him out there for so long under both VSCs. Why they didn't pit him under the first one or the second one, I don't quite understand. They took the gamble, didn't really work out for him, and then at the end got a little bit unlucky with the safety car and wound up behind his teammate kind of after he did all the work to get up the front of the grid, wasn't led around, then wove on the straight, got himself a penalty, and here he is all the way back in 9th. So just kind of a bit of a mess of a day, I would say, for him. Not so great. I think that's kind of bit on the team, bit on him, and just not great.
Yeah, good call on the penalty as well that he got there, which was really kind of a kick in the nuts when he was already kind of down. Andy, anything on Daniel Ricciardo's day?
It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. He was in the points. At least he was tickling the outside of the points for a good chunk of it. Obviously the pit stop, which I will rant about longer in full detail later. But he was the start of that bad pit stop. I think it was 6 seconds, so that kind of dumped him down. The second pit stop that he did take advantage of the full safety car, or no, it was the second virtual safety car. I thought it was a good idea for him to pit there, but they pitted him and they put him on a set of hard tires. Like you know your car isn't working well on pace. You know where your car is deficient. Why not throw the gamble and put a set of softs on? There was only like 15 laps to go. Instead, they put him on a set of hard tires. There were other guys on mediums, and he was just eaten alive effectively by Lance Stroll, who stole the last point from him.
Yeah, I don't think anybody used softs at all today, right?
No.
Yeah. Well, with the way the mediums and the hards, I mean, I guess the hards lasted a while for a few guys, but the way the mediums are graining. But 15 laps, you would hope that a veteran could make it through there with that. But Zhou Guanyu, 8th place, top finish of his career, second time finishing in the points. So hell of a race for him. Had some decent moments during the race too. So showed us a little bit. And the finish right behind his teammate Valtteri Bottas. Obviously, both these guys did take advantage of that 5-second Alonso penalty. But probably the best day of the year, maybe overall for Alfa Romeo.
Other than maybe Bahrain, I think this is their best team result. and two conflicting kind of different strategies. Bottas starting on the hard tires and making that strategy work. When you start on the hard tires, watch what Bottas did and when he pitted, because that's how you make the strategy work. There were other guys who started on a tire that didn't quite listen to that idea. So good on them. Good overall pace. It's interesting that we're talking about the top 10 here. If you compare it with the top 10 in Bahrain, it's very similar. So kind of this track in Bahrain, a lot of similar characteristics, the long hairpins, the long straights. You can kind of tell what type of circuits are going to favor what type of cars now.
All right, and then, Deanna, anything on Esteban Ocon's day? He seemed to stay in front of Charles for far longer than I would have hoped.
Yeah, I mean, well, he pitted under VSC, so that kind of just shows Alpine. That's what you probably should have done with Alonso because he ended up ahead. Anyway, did hold up Ocon, he held up Leclerc at the beginning, but then couldn't on the safety car restart, which I was very impressed with Leclerc because after not being able to get past him, he was able to get past two Alpines on 8-lap older mediums and then carry those mediums through to the end. And he was definitely the longest medium runner, I think, of anybody throughout the day. So sorry, kind of getting into Leclerc there, but yeah, I think pretty decent day from him.
Yeah, good point on clean air Leclerc. That air coming off those Alpines must have been pretty clean at that point in the race. I don't know. But speaking of Charles Leclerc, goes from 19th to 5th place, so I would call that an acceptable result. I know that there were some rumblings that Ferrari believed that he could finish 4th, which maybe he could have, but he kept getting screwed, I thought, by DRS trains. Would get the pace and would get real close to making a pass on one of the straights. But with the guy in front of him also having DRS, he just couldn't quite get it done in a few different points, Ocon being one of those. But I thought overall, I was impressed with his day. Like I said earlier, Ferrari did get lucky there with the Yuki Tsunoda safety car. That definitely helped them out, but they had themselves in a position to be helped out by that luck, I felt. So I fully expect him to come out swinging in Silverstone. He's had some good races there before, and I think being able to start wherever he qualifies from, which should still be, I would expect top row, for Ferrari pretty much all season long. So hopefully we get something there. And then George Russell. I mean, what is this, the 9th race now? So 9 out of 9. Perfect top 5 finish all season long. He's got to be Mr. Consistent right now because he's even the only guy that scored his points in every race so far this year too. So pretty impressive from him. Any other additions for George Russell?
I mean, I'm going to say it now. When eventually he ascends to become a world championship contender, he's going to win it because everybody just gets out of his way. Sergio Perez, you look at today, Sergio Perez got out of his way. Charles Leclerc yesterday, with all the engine penalties, out of his way. And he was just there and did the job. Didn't really have to do anything spectacular again, but comes home P4. So that's how you rack up points in a season that you look at Mercedes as a team and you could say, you look at their headlines and, oh my God, they look so lost and they're not doing anything. They're scoring every weekend. They're scoring consistently. They're not a championship level contender, but they're still pretty damn good.
I agree.
And
it's like, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree. They constantly, with Red Bull and for having these issues, they are just picking up every single piece that they can. But one comment I will say, kind of going back to Leclerc as well, I think he ended up like about 3 seconds behind Russell. Probably would have had a really great shot of taking 4th had Ferrari not Ferrari'd that pit stop and dropped him straight into the middle of, I think, whatever that Stroll train was at that point. Just held him up a bit and then probably kind of slowed him down getting back through the pack. But yeah, that's just Ferrari.
Yeah, I was
to say Ferrari messed up, and that's just
Oh, thanks.
Make a mention.
That's a really good point. I was obviously watching Leclerc's on board the whole race, so I got to see all of his overtakes, which there was quite a few. Fun to watch. But then at the end there, I think the closest he really got to George was like 2.4, and that was with, I want to say, like 4 laps to go. So he probably needed another 10 laps or so to catch him if he would have. But I did like that he closed down that gap for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point too, Andy, about Mercedes. They're just kind of like lurking in the shadows, collecting every point they possibly can, taking advantage of the opportunities they have, which are few and far between, I think, with the car they have right now. But that's not the team you want lurking behind you. because they've been pretty damn successful for a reason. So if they figure something out at some point, it's not too late for them to make some kind of run. All right, so let's move on to the podium. Yeah. Yeah, what is it, 15? Or no?
40.
I was looking at, it's 15 between Russell and Leclerc. So, 40 points.
It's 40 points in the constructors. So, it's still to play for.
Yeah. All right, so moving up to the podium then, where we find Lewis Hamilton back on the podium there in third place. Carlos Sainz ties his career best finish in second. And Max Verstappen with his first win, his first pole, his first win in Canada. Andy, what do you think about Lewis Hamilton's day?
Can I just say I've never seen a Twitterverse have a complete 180-degree dynamic shift from Friday to Sunday? Because if you looked at the feeds on Friday, oh my God, this season is over. We're done. They're going to have to put it in the bin. They're going to have to put the side pods back on. This car doesn't work. And we get to Sunday, and lo and behold, he's P3. And now he's smiling again. And life is grand. And we're pushing for the championship, even though we're only 9 rounds in. Oh my God, one result can do all that. Okay. That having been said, he just did the job. Good in the wet, good qualifying, solid qualifying to get to P4, using the high ground of track position all day in order to garner a result. And again, nothing spectacular. Him and Russell, both of the Mercedes cars, really nothing spectacular about their day, but there when it counted. And a personal best. Again, look at Bahrain. Hamilton was on the podium. He's on the podium here.
Yep. And then Deanna, Carlos Sainz. I mean, what did you think there at the end? Did you think he had a chance to pass Max?
I think he might have. I mean, you continue to put pressure on him. You don't know. Like, he might make a mistake. You never know. But it was just really, really great to see him pushing Max like that, to be able to stay on the pace with him like that. I hope that this is kind of the beginning of his resurgence here. So I think he did absolutely everything he could. Maybe wasn't quite on for the win, but to stay for those last, I think about 20 laps, about within a second of him, it was just fun to watch and awesome to see him kind of coming back into his own, hopefully.
Yeah, after that now, that second place finish with Checo getting 0 points. Sainz is only 27 points behind Checo for second place in the driver's standing. So that's definitely a surmountable gap there. And yeah, it could be the start of his resurgence. Definitely going to instill some confidence in him. I mean, I was cheering for him pretty hard to chase down Max. Wasn't super confident in it, but like you said, like if you keep enough pressure on somebody, anybody's going to make a mistake, whether it be,
I would
one of
say
the best of all time or current champ.
Unless, you're a Red Bull or diehard Max fan, I think most of the F1 verse was cheering for Sainz there, trying to get him a win. It reminded me a lot of the duel that he had with Gasly and Monza, where at certain points the Ferrari was better, and at certain other points the Red Bull was just better. And you could see the differences in the respective cars. And it was a fascinating battle, especially looking at the sectors. Yeah. Between both of them. But I would actually say this was actually a heck of a battle. I know it didn't come out. He didn't get a chance to do a lunge move at the end there. But to keep that pressure on in what is still dirty air, it's still there. It's not gone. You can follow a little bit better, but it's still killing your tires. So to be able to still do that and to do that as well as he did, damn, this was good for Carlos Sainz. If this is a harbinger of things to come, dude could find it. Yeah,
especially when that Yuki DNF happened, I was like, all the bad luck against Sainz has flipped around. He finally got good luck. This is it. He's going to get the win. Like, I really started believing at that point, and just wasn't quite enough because Max Verstappen, driver number 1, finishes first again, and he just looks like he's on another level this year. And I mean, who's got something to say about Max? Because I don't know what to say besides he was Max again today.
Yeah, I mean, in the qualifying, he was clearly the best in the wet. There was not going to be anybody that was going to touch him. Even if Leclerc had done, a full-on Q1, Q2, Q3, which he wasn't going to do, which screwed up all of those predictions for us, by the way. Thank you very much, Ferrari. But good call. Mm-hmm. That's the right call. That's what you do there. But Max was just the class of the field today. The only way it was not going to be him is if he made a mistake or if he dropped it or there was some sort of a reliability issue. It never came. So therefore, he takes the checkers and well-deserved win. Good drive for Max.
Deanna, anything on Max before we go to break?
No, he's just been so impressive all season, I think. I mean, can you really think of a major mistake he's made? I don't think at all. Anything that's happened to him to not get him up first is kind of out of his control. So it's been hugely impressive. I do wish Sainz would have won today, but yeah, you can't fault that performance.
Yeah, well put. All right, so we are going to take a quick break, hear from a couple sponsors, pay a couple bills, and we'll be right back to recap the driver and team standings. Welcome back to Season 4, Episode 23 of the Outlet F1 Podcast, the 2022 Canadian Grand Prix race review. You got James here along with Andy and Deanna. And Deanna, I hand it off to you to go through our top 10 of the driver standings.
All right. So in P1, extending his lead is Max Verstappen on 175 points. In second is still Sergio Perez on 129, but now only 3 points behind is Charles Leclerc on 126. In fourth is still George Russell on 111, but now Sainz is closer in fifth on 102. Hamilton is sixth with 77, Norris in seventh with 50, Bottas in eighth with 46, Ocon in ninth with 39. And Fernando Alonso, I think taking the spot from Pierre Gasly, is in 10th with 18.
All right, very good. Thank you. Andy, why don't you run us through the teams?
So our team standings following this round, in P1 with 304 points is Red Bull Racing. P2 on 228 is Ferrari. P3 is Mercedes on 188. P4 is McLaren on 65. P5, coming up at their heels now, is Alpine on 57. P6 is Alfa Romeo on 51. P7, AlphaTauri on 27. P8 is Aston Martin with 16. P9 is Haas Ferrari, a long way away from the Bahrain glory. They are now on 15 points in P9. And in P10, still scoring, but only the 3 points, is Williams.
Thank you, Andy. Andy,
Martin away from Haas.
Andy, if you had to bet it right now, how confident would you be in McLaren holding on to fourth place?
I think today was probably level 0 back with like that Bahrain race. I don't think it'll be as bad moving forward. I think the tracks that they're going to will more suit them better. I think they're going to do it, but I think they're going to make it ugly. That's my thought.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into the fan emails now. And for that, I hand it off to Deanna again.
So starting off with Rachel Fleming, says, great result for Alfa Romeo, especially for Zhou. I actually think he has done a half-decent job this season, and the last 2 races in particular, he has seemed to be on pace, driving better than a certain Canadian, for example. Not sure which one. Also, Mick Schumacher was cursed by Crofty today when Crofty said that he hopes Mick gets points, then he goes out. Commentators.
Yeah, we need to stop talking about Mick Schumacher not scoring points on the
Crofty curse.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree on the Zhou part. He has looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
I've been very surprised, pleasantly surprised. So next up, Christopher Gerstel says, worst luck ever for Haas. A wonderful qualifying position, only to be ruined by the meatball flag for Kevin and a mechanical failure for Mick. Just unfair for them.
Yeah, I said it before. K-Mag's got a beef with the FIA. If that is any other team, we've seen far worse get done. And it was interesting. I guess we had both race directors there, both Niels Vidic and Eduardo Freitas. So, dang. I mean, I know we've been a lot more conservative, but that's just crazy. That just screwed his race up. He was not a danger to himself or anybody else. He was on pace. If he screws up because of other strategy things, that's fine, but don't take it from him like that. That's tough. That's just tough.
Is meatball flag the technical term for that flag, Andy?
It's what I've heard it called because I think it turns you into a meatball because you got a lose temper after that.
I don't think I've heard that before, but I love it.
All right. Next up, John Scott asks, has Mick done enough to get a 1-year extension on his Haas contract, or will he be a reserve driver next year? Thoughts?
You go first, Andy.
I think he brings enough commercial name recognition to the Haas team that they're going to do everything they can, unless he wrecks them out of the championship, which is still possible, to keep him in that seat, because I think they need him more than maybe Mick needs Haas, honestly, is the answer. Because Mick will have options wherever else he goes. There's a Ferrari reserve seat waiting for him whenever he wants it. He could also go to Alfa Romeo if Ferrari really wanted to push the button. We know how highly he's regarded in the Ferrari family, but he is pushing the envelope. And today was no fault of his own, but historically he's not been providing the results. So pressure continues, but I don't think they're going to go that way. I wouldn't see him as a reserve driver at Haas.
I continue to sit on my take that Mick really isn't that good, but I would be shocked if he wasn't in F1 still next year. Like, there's no way. And Andy, you kind of did a good job of explaining why. But yeah, he's not on that verge unless he starts crashing out even more and just cost the team way more than what he's bringing in. But yeah, I think his seat in F1 is safe for at least another year.
Yep, I fully agree with all that, and I hopefully after this weekend though was slightly a bit of a confidence boost. His highest qualifying ever in P6, and he was doing a pretty good job until his engine gave up. So hopefully things improve for him. But yeah, I think he'll be there next year. All right, so last, Glenn Moore says, I honestly, and more importantly, thought that DRS would be a thing of the past with these new rules. However, it's still effing here, isn't it? What's the point? Anyone want to take that?
Well, sadly, you still need it. I mean, There's still enough. I mean, I've seen the comparisons of where the airflow is supposed to go. It's shooting straight up. It's doing its job. You can follow closely. But what you're not seeing, you still have the problem. And I think it's because, I honestly think the tires are too soft. You're getting this incredible tire drag that happens really, really quickly. You're seeing a lot. And therefore, everybody's conserving the tires, and they're not pushing the envelope trying to make overtakes. The other aspect that we have here is we have the cost cap, and people are afraid of wrecking. So I don't think they're pushing the absolute limit of trying to make an overtake, especially in this environment now, because they realize, hey, if I wreck 2-3 times, my team's in trouble. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things. Yeah, I'd love to see DRS be a thing of the past, but I think unfortunately, at least for right now, with the packages that we have, they can get more refined as we continue into this rules set. But for right now, I think we still need DRS.
Yeah, the DRS trains still are frustrating at times and at certain tracks, but I mean, you said it well, Andy.
Agreed.
All right. Thank you for all those emails. We love seeing those. We'll keep them coming. All right. Let's get into our weekly awards segment of the show here. And we start off, as always, with rubbish. I'll go first with this one. I'm just going to say orange teams. I'll let Andy go through all the McLaren stuff. But also, my beloved Texas Longhorns lost today to a different college from Texas that shall remain unnamed in the Kyle's Rules series. So, kind of a double gut punch today for the orange teams. Andy, who you got?
Well, okay, here comes Mclaren Rant number 1. So number 1 rant is the decision, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, the decision not right when Lando goes out in Q2. To me, that is a no-brainer decision. You throw all new components in, you take the pain now, you lose effectively 3 grid places. You're sacrificing, basically, if you're playing chess, you're sacrificing a knight here. It's not that valuable of a piece. Instead, you threw in an old engine on an engine-dependent track. Are you kidding me? And you send him out there and you expect him to be able to overtake people with the package you gave him? What are you thinking? It boggled the mind. It didn't make any sense. Bad call. And guess what? He wasn't going to score anyway, even if you put in all the new components with the way that the car handled around this track. So at least you would have taken the pain, and then you could have had some gain maybe later down the line. You got to be thinking pain can be an opportunity in F1. And when you didn't take it into account this time, you screwed up now and you screwed up later, because you're going to have to do it. You're going to have this engine penalty thing later. Everybody's got to do it.
Yep. Well put, Andy. John agrees as well. He just said what Andy said. What the fuck? Deanna, go ahead. Sorry.
So how many is it until you get a penalty?
If you go over your allocation of 3, it depends on what the component is. Because some of them have 4, some of them have 3. 3 power units.
If he took a new one, would it have been 3 without a penalty?
I think he was on his last one. I think the one that he was on was his last one. But even so, why not introduce it? Even if it's not a penalty, why not do the same thing that Leclerc did, and then throw something into your pool? You don't send him out there on an engine that's got 2, 3, 4 races worth of mileage on it. Makes no sense.
Great. Anyway, I agree. Just have some question.
Fair.
That's also my rubbish. McLaren.
Okay.
There we go.
Ganging up on McLaren. All right. For analysis paralysis, I've got the black and orange flag, or now known as the meatball flag, for K-Mag. So that basically the analysis paralysis on the FIA. I think that was absolute bullshit. I mean, what was it last year? I think it was last year. Lewis Hamilton, the edge of his wing was like dangling for however long, and that's all good. We've seen it many times where people damage their front wings and don't have to get pulled in. So shame on you, Alpine, for bringing it up, and Ocon for pointing it out too. And then the FIA started investigating, and just a terrible, terrible flag for K-Mag. Andy, who you got for analysis paralysis?
All right, so here comes McLaren Rant number 2, and here's where we're going to analyze...
Waiting for this one.
The pit stop from hell, basically. So you had Daniel Ricciardo on medium tires, which was the predominant strategy, and you had Lando Norris starting the race on hard tires. Now, when you start the race on hard tires, you're basically committing to running long. So you have to do what Valtteri Bottas did, what Sergio Perez used to do at Racing Point, hell, what Lance Stroll used to do at Racing Point to get results. You got to run longer than everybody else and pray you get some sort of a safety car, which you would have gotten, actually, as it turned out. But trying to get track position, because that's the high ground. So the first VSC, they stayed out. That was the correct call. I was fine with that. The second VSC hits, you pit Danny. Okay, that's correct. He was on the medium tire. He needs to get off of that. The hard tire was the preferred race tire. I understood that. A 6-second stop for Danny. Not a good execution. Looked like the front right did not want to come off. Okay, that kind of thing is going to happen. So he goes out. Now, on Lando's radio was a hot mess as he's coming down the straight. They're telling him, we think we're going to stay out. We think we're going to stay out. Box, 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 box. This sounds like... This is reminiscent of Mercedes in Germany of 2019 all over again. So now he's coming in. The team aren't ready for him. They throw a half a set of mediums on his car. I didn't know if those were actually his tires. Everybody's looking around, pointing at each other, going, what the heck is going on? They then had to take all those mediums off, put him on another new set of hard tires. Oh, by the way, congratulations. Now he still has to come back and pit again because he hasn't run both compounds. What are you doing? All the way around, this was terrible. The planning was terrible, and not to mention, the strategy call to box in there was also terrible. How do you run long? You have to plan A and extend here to get track position. It was the only way he was going to get points out. Did not happen. Terrible stop. One of the worst moments I've had this year. My hat went flying.
Are you still wearing the hat, Andrew, or did you switch hats?
I took off the Ricardo hat I was wearing because that's my normal tradition, and I put this on because I didn't know what else to do. I almost came on today with a different team hat.
Oh, Andy's been getting fired up lately. He must be feeling good again, though, because that was a good one.
It means my voice is back and I'm able to do it, so at least there's that.
John agreed with you again, said also what Andy said, and what the fuck again. Deanna, what do you got for analysis paralysis?
I was going to say K-Mag one stop, but I will go with Andy now.
He won you over.
Yeah.
I am the defender of the papaya people until I'm blue in the face. I can't defend that decision. That was just terrible.
All right, let's go dark horse now. Andy, who do you got for the dark horse?
I'm going to give this one to Esteban Ocon for Alpine being there. This was obviously before I knew the Alonso had the penalty, but I thought just their pace, especially in qualifying, was really good. And Ocon, again, doing the job, being there, scoring points for his team. I thought he showed very well today. Good job, Esteban.
All right. John went with Zhou Guan Yu. He says his Q3 appearance led to a solid points day, so I'll agree with that. For my dark horse, though, I'm giving it to Lewis Hamilton, who with his podium finish today is now only 34 points behind his teammate. So almost one race total of points behind his teammate. So Great job, Lewis. You're still in this one. Keep fighting. Deanna, what do you got for your dark horse?
I'm going with Lance Stroll.
Oh!
Bringing his season total to a grand total of 3 points. Pulling Aston Martin all the way into 8th in the Constructors, away from Haas. Really just doing Canada proud. I really thought he was going to DNF or something. So, big props. Scoring a point. Doing good work.
Canada.
So when can we expect the Red Bull protest against now the green Red Bull? Because now it's scoring points. That's what I want to know.
They're knocking on the door. All right, let's go driver of the day. I've got Max Verstappen. He was Max today, and being Max is pretty damn good. Andy, who do you got?
I'm going to go with Max Verstappen. One, the wet qualifying, he was a step above and a step beyond. And in the race, he was actually pressured today. He could have made a mistake. He could have easily, dropped a gear, done a bad shift, or, anything could have happened in any one of those situations. Didn't do it, stayed in front. So well done, Max, and driver of the day for me.
All right. Deanna, who do you have for driver of the day?
Max Verstappen.
All right. 3 for 3. John has Lewis Hamilton for his driver of the day. He says car was absolutely undrivable Friday on yet another experimental setup. Then in the great equalizer of rain, he gets that rusty arrow into P4, then outpaces Russell throughout the race. Heck of a race. All right. Prediction results. Andy, hit me with the bad news.
All right. Well, the bad news is you came in last. You asked for it. So
today's news, same as yesterday's.
You only got 1 point. You did have Max Verstappen on the podium. John is in third place this week. He had P1 on the podium with Max, and he did get the prop bet because he was the only one that bet on Team Canada to finish, and they both did. They both saw the checkered flag, so he gets the prop bet there. I finished tied for first on the weekend. I had P1 in the podium. I had the race fastest lap by being the slowest. You guys are all setting track records. Okay, I guess I was closest there. And I got the P4 bonus pick for picking Mr. Consistency, George Russell. I am tied with my cohort Deanna here. She got the qualifying time by coming over the top of me and being the slowest. She got Max Verstappen on the podium, and she also had George Russell as her bonus pick. So overall, we have a change at the top. And Deanna has now overtaken John. 24 versus John's 23. I am right on the heels of both of you guys now on 22. And James, it's still a long season. You got plenty of opportunities to score points, but you got a little work to do now. You're on 17.
Can we edit that last part out?
It's still a long season. You have 17.
Oh, this is not good. This is going to be an epic comeback or just a continued epic failure. But I'm not feeling too confident right now. All right, so Andy, any final thoughts on today's Canadian Grand Prix?
For most people, I'm hoping that the ratings for this is actually going to do really well because it seemed like it fit right nicely into your Father's Day. Could get in, get out, and kind of continue to go do things, which was, I thought, pretty cool. It's nice to see the race on big ABC. That's always significant for the sport. We now go from here. We take a week off. We then get into the European season proper. We start that with Silverstone, the ancestral and spiritual home of F1. We go now to Great Britain in 2 weeks. Very different track characteristics, and maybe another rash of upgrades because this is usually the second race where you see a lot of upgrades come in. So going to get interesting from here out for sure.
All right, Deanna, any closing thoughts?
Just once again, happy to be back in Canada. Great weekend all around. Good fun times. See you in Silverstone.
Yeah, I enjoy the Canadian Grand Prix as well. I typically do. It is one of my favorites on the track or on the calendar, and definitely probably top 3 of races I want to attend outside of home U.S. Grand Prix. So, I didn't realize the British Grand Prix is going to be 4th of July weekend, so that should be a fun holiday weekend with hopefully a really good race. I'm sure it will be. But yeah, I think that's it for today's review. Make sure you check us out here in about a week and a half for the Grand Prix or the Man, I can't say Great Britain today. The British Grand Prix preview show. But Andy, why don't you go ahead and close us out?
As always, whether your results are good or whether your results are bad, just remember, may all your laps be fast.